1. Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Next Level Awakening podcast. I am your host, Darvid Osiris. Next Level Awakening podcast. There we go. So, hope everyone is doing great, and I'm just wondering, how are you guys vibrating? Today is a special episode. It's a very interesting episode. Episode 2 of this recording of this podcast and things like that. I record on Thursday evenings and nights, and it's available on all 6 platforms that will be available on Tuesday at 2 a.m. So with that being said, this is my second episode. I dived into it a bit on the first episode, history or mystery. So it's kind of a wordplay within the title, history or mystery, his story being his story, history being his story, and mystery being my story. So which one do you prefer? It's a lot of people that are in tune with what's going on historically and things like that. It's a lot of people that are into what's going on their story. Like what I mean by mystery, my story, the mythical aspects of things, or just your family history, your family's history, like where you come from. This is what is keying in on, because history, his story likes to tell you where you come from, and it's not on your account. So where am I going with this? I touched on this on my first episode of Knowing Thyself on a Physical Scale. You know, I talked about doing genealogy, like the issue that a lot of people that are considered Black or African American in the United States, you know, go through on a daily basis due to paper genocide that has happened over the years in multiple states and things like that. You know, just basically knowing exactly where the Black person in America comes from. So I'm going to say these, I don't want to say their theories, but these are arguments that people have. It's like a split of us coming from Africa and us coming from, or just being Aboriginal or indigenous to the land of the Americas. So things like that. And I just wanted to talk about the historical aspect of things first. So history, you know, history is made up by people that are considered the winners of, quote unquote. You couldn't see the quotation marks because I had them in the air. But with that being said, they say history is made by the victor and things like that. So the victor gets to write what happens in his story, which is from his point of view, his own perspective and things like that. So history is a collective notion of what people have observed, and they have made it into their own perspective and their own viewpoints about what happened. Not necessarily the viewpoint of the people that are considered the quote unquote losers, or the people that have been affected on the opposite end of that person's viewpoint. So hope that made sense. Probably rambled a bit, but yeah, going into the historical aspects of things, like we have what we call textbooks, where we're learning things on I don't know how to wrap my head about, but on a certain level, I'll say a certain level for a lack of better terms, within like schools and the information that is provided and things like that. There's laws in place that certain information is provided. I'm not going to go into personal thoughts and feelings about it. I'm just going to lay it out. Like there's a certain structure of what information, the way information is presented in the school system when it comes to history, you know, which is his story. And then we're living in an environment, in a country per se, quote unquote. I can go into how it's a corporation another time. But this country, the way things are ran and how information is provided in this space. So with that being said, history is told from a viewpoint of someone who came over basically to a land, well, some people that came over to a land, conquered it. You know, we already know how it goes. You know, you can go in the story of Christopher Columbus and people like that. You know, the English that came over, the Dutch, the Portuguese, all the people that came over, the French even, you know, how they colonized a land and, you know, observing the people there, taking their land, taking the resources. This is what they tell us in history. And, you know, and they have different stories about, all right, we came to this land, we observed for a bit, We gathered some information on the people that were there. Ended up turning on them, slaughtering them, things like that, killing them off with a bunch of diseases and things like that. And then we brought over people that were from another country that had no idea who we were. We've been to these countries before and things like that. We were able to go to war, observe these people just like we did to these people in the foreign land that we came from, because we got kicked out our own countries because we were like criminals and things like that. So, sailed the sea. So this is just the history. That's what they tell us. This was just what they tell us about, the people that are considered African American or, black in the United States, that our ancestors were brought over. Like, whatever you believe, this is what you believe. I'm not here to sway anybody's opinion. I'm just going on different perspectives, like a historical perspective and viewpoints from other people, which is like mystery, my story, that which is also their story or our story, things like that. Because everyone's story is different. I'm gonna get a little bit to my story, which is the mystery part, like people learning themselves on a spiritual and a physical sense. So that being said, yeah, going back to the history part, going back to what they tell us in history, people that were brought over, they were conquered in a way, brought over by ships, things like that. They were taken, like put together with people from different nations or tribes or whatever, brought over to the sea. I'm not gonna go into the slavery story. Like we all know what happened. I'm just talking about where these people are considered to come from. Mostly from Central and West Africa. Because there's documents stating mostly slaves came from like Central America, and Central Africa, and were brought mostly to the Caribbean and South America. So that's what the documents say and things like that. So yeah, that's like this history part of people telling a certain group of people where they come from, things like that. Now, I'm going to go into genealogy, or the mystery part. The mystery being the my story or your story, things like that. So genealogy is what your family's history is, tracing your family members down by birth records, census reports, death records, marriage records, even army listings and things like that. So it's a multitude of things you can do. There's many different websites you can use. There's a free one that I've used called familysearch.org, and just plug that in there. And then you have Ancestry, which allows you to get a DNA test. I might as well go into the DNA test. So that could be a part of your story, or it could be a part of history, things like that. You actually tracing your DNA, tracing yourself through the DNA, whether you believe it's accurate or not. That's subjective. Whether you believe that is accurate or not, just you finding out and putting it together. Because I know Ancestry has it basically kind of makes it easier for you to get a sense of where your family comes from what I've heard. I've never done a DNA test myself, and I will say this: if you're skeptical about a DNA test, you can, for different reasons, for it being accurate. I'm just say the government already has your DNA. If you were born in the hospital, have you taken any type of test, like a drug test, a blood test, things like that, the government, the hospitals, they all have your DNA. Like, you're not giving them nothing that they don't already have collected. So that's just one thing. If you were born in the hospital, donated blood, got in blood work, got in a drug test, they have your DNA. So, and there's nothing that, basically the way America is set up, there's nothing, privacy is not even a thing anymore, but that's a whole different topic. So with that being said, the DNA test can help you trace down a bit of where your lineages come from, things like that. And it lays out a map which can help you piece together your genealogy. I'll say that's the beneficial part, doing it via Ancestry. I know you have 23andMe that gives you a haplogroup of, you can just research the haplogroup that you're from and things like that. So that's a good thing. That's also a good thing with the benefits of doing the DNA test. I think it's a bit pricey for some. So yeah, you can do it if you want to. I'm just gonna say, yeah, do what's best for you, what's in your heart. Yeah. So what's next? I was going to talk about genealogy, like searching your parents and family through the census report, because you're going to find something interesting. So I'm speaking towards people that are considered black or African American in the United States. You'll find some interesting things about your family members on there. I've talked to people, and they were able to trace back their Aboriginal indigenous roots and their African roots. So which is very interesting. I had a good friend of mine. She was very good with the genealogy and things like that. She was able to trace back her lineage back to the 1500s, which is amazing. I've been able myself personally to the 1800s to late 1700s, I'll say. Maybe not a census report, because the census reports are, like, when you're reading the census reports, they're very tricky, especially the older that they get. So a census report in 1860 is different than a census report in like 1800, 1810, 1820 even. Yeah, because, race classifications. I'll say like the first documents of the census, it has ethnicities of free whites, male and female. You have other free persons, and you have slaves. So, and then it evolves into free white persons, free colored persons, and slaves. So going back, I'm gonna pedal back to the first census reports. Is all other free peoples and Indians exempt from tax, or non-taxed Indians, something like that. And then the later it goes down, you have white people, black people, mulatto, colored, things like that. So it's a lot of changing. If you notice, you search through your family's history, that you can see that they changed ethnicities of your family members. Maybe they were mulatto at first, then they were changed to Negro, colored, black, or they may have been black at first in some instances, considered black at first, then they were changed to mulatto. It's very interesting how roots can be traced back, or how they changed ethnicities. And I'll keep it a buck, or be honest with you, they didn't really care about reporting people's ethnicity correctly. Like, sometimes they would even go to people's neighbors to get information about them. They really didn't care. And then it's very difficult to read those census reports because their handwriting is atrocious. I know I got pretty bad handwriting myself, but their handwriting is utterly disgusting back then. So, yeah, they could care less about documenting who's who, and that's not, a free white or someone that's considered white. So, yeah, that's one thing. And there's a lot of, laws that were set in place, like paper genocide and things like that. So, this podcast, I'm going to make this notion, like, this podcast is for people that have an open mind, that are willing to think for themselves, the free thinker aspect, actually have form your own opinion. You don't have to believe anything that I say. I'll say this disclaimer every podcast episode: you do not have to believe anything that I say. You can just do it for yourself, do the research yourself if you want to, or if you just want to listen because it's interesting, that's fine too. So, yeah, going back to the subject at hand, if you are interested in doing your genealogy, finding out different things, I would say this. First, you would want to do is go to elders, your parents, whoever is alive. Go into the oldest family member that you may know that's alive, and just talk and get information out of them, so you can at least start your tree here and there. Have family search and ancestry for they have hints and stuff of. They try to make it as easy as possible for you to find your ancestors that you may not know. So let's say, you just start off yourself, then you add your parents, then you add your parents, because everybody doesn't have access to, their parents' information, or both parents are either, only one parent, things like that. Some people may be adopted too. So it all depends on, what access who you're able to get information from, like knowing their date of births, knowing their names, knowing where they were born. So yeah, that's one thing. I'll say this. I'm from Maryland. I have a lot of family that's from Virginia on my dad's side. Mom's side, a lot of people that's from Maryland itself. And yeah, from what I've traced down. So I'll go a bit into my own things that I've traced down, what people have helped me connect it to, and things like that. So on my dad's side, a lot of his family came from the Caribbean on his mom's side. So they have that African background, I'll say. To them, they're from South Carolina, which was a mixing pot of indigenous and African folks anyway, because they brought a lot of Africans or a lot of people from the Caribbean to South Carolina. This is the research that I've done myself, things like that. And then on his mother's dad's side, this is where it gets interesting, because someone gave me information on surnames and where they could trace back to. So I'll say this, it's a possibility that I'm just going to say it traces back, the website that I got traces back to the Powhatan Indian or Cherokee tribes, which is Pocahontas' family for simpler terms. Basically, Pocahontas' family, that part of Virginia, they were from that area. I have a lot of family that's from that area in Virginia and things like that. And, if you could go into the paper genocide thing, Walter Plecker, he was a person that made sure that people that were dark or didn't fit the mold of what an Indian was supposed to look like, that he made sure that they didn't classify as that. So you can take this with a grain of salt, like I said. So that's what I was able to trace on my dad's side. My mom's side, my mom's father told her that he was Indian, and I seen his father's name on the enrollment in the enlistment for the Cherokee rolls. So trying to figure out what's sure on that, because they did say, because what I found, it did say like something, it could be a different person. So not too sure on that, but yeah, we can see. We'll see. Next, what else did I find on my mom's side? A lot very interesting. They like to paint this notion that all black people were enslaved during this time frame, and that's not necessarily the case. During the slavery era and whatnot, from what I was able to piece together myself doing this genealogy, a lot of people on my mom's side through her maternal lineage were free people. They were farmers. A lot of my family were farmers on both sides, but they were free people in Baltimore and Maryland, different parts of Maryland, things like that. These were free people, free colored persons, what the census said. So, which is very interesting. I was able to even give my grandmother some information that she didn't know about, because I guess she didn't have these conversations when she was growing up. She's 93. So yeah, that's a bit of a backstory that I've shared on the genealogy part for myself. And I have offered genealogy services for free. I'm not going to say I'm a genealogist, but I can plug you into a free site, which is familysearch.org, and help you out a bit if you're comfortable with sharing information with me, and that's fine. Yeah, just wanted to talk about other people's experiences with. Now, I'm not going to talk about their experiences first, but there are a lot of black people that you consider black or African American that were able to trace their roots to indigenous families, indigenous tribes to the Americas, which is amazing, and it's beautiful to see that. So yeah, it's just beautiful to see people actually coming into I don't want to even say an awakening, but into a motion of wanting to find out who they truly are. And it's a beautiful sight to see, whether they are from the continent of Africa or, that they're indigenous to the land of the masses or the Americas, or, a mix of both, which is a possibility, which is a nice possibility, yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing to know where you come from at the end of the day. So yeah, it's just history. History paints a viewpoint for you. It wants to paint a viewpoint for you. the way that information is provided during this time frame or during the ways now, like the education system is set up for what it's supposed to be set up for, to get you to think a certain way. It takes away creativity. It takes away open-mindedness. I'll say that about the education system. I learned this. I graduated from college. I learned this in a creativity, entrepreneurship type of class. So education is, like, we're taught early on that it's only one answer to a question. And that just takes away all open-mindedness. That takes away all, I'm not going to say all, but it takes away a lot of creative ability, a lot of thinking processes from your thought frame and things like that. Because, okay, it's only one answer. There's only one correct answer to this question. And, if we get into that, like I said before, we lose our open-mindedness, and the way to get back that creative ability is to think of multiple ways to approach a question. This is what instills critical thinking. There we go. It's a lack of critical thinking that the education system provides, and we're learned this at a young age. Like, okay, we got to take these tests, these multiple choice answers, and it could be 4 to 5 depending on, or even like 3, 2, true or false. Is this true? Is this false? What's like? Why can't it be a bit of both? Things like that. So it's just the way this critical thinking and free thinking is what has been taken out of. That was never, not even taken out. It was never a part of the education system. They just wanted you to think a certain way and just go with the motion when it comes to society, the way things want to be run. Because let's just be honest, society is run by people that are egotistical, people that want the world to be in a certain way, and that's not necessarily fair. We see it played out in a lot that's going on now, and I'm not gonna talk too much on that. I'm not gonna talk too much on that aspect of what the government is about and what it's doing. I'll save that for another episode. But I'll run this down for those who are new to the podcast, new to listening, things like that. This podcast is about elevating yourself on a physical, spiritual, emotional, and a mental level. And with that being said, I said this before. I hope you come with an open mind, being able to critically think. Even if you don't agree, like, think about what I'm saying. Like, where can I go in for yourself? Don't try to prove me wrong. You ain't got to prove nothing to me. Just for yourself. How can I take this information, elevate from it, and use it to my benefit? What's best for me? What's best for me? How do I find out, like, for this episode at least, what can I do to find out my history? What's my story, which is mystery? And I'll talk about some spiritual stuff too. Like, the way mythology is looked at, or oral tradition is looked at. Everything has to be in a textbook. Everything has to be written. Everything has to be verified and peer reviewed and approved by paperwork, by paper validation. Because the people that run the society, they value paperwork more than anything. There you go. They value paperwork more than anything. Now, with that being said, mythology, in its original context, mythos, coming from the word mythos in Greek, meant true and sacred. It's actually a pre-Greek word. It's a melanated indigenous type of word, or an African word, things like that. That meant true or sacred. And how is mythology painted now? It's painted as, it's just fairy tales. No, all this stuff is fairy tales. You shouldn't believe it. Is only one right way, and that's history. Then all the mystery is gone, which is your story. If we do the play on words that I'm doing here, like, your story doesn't matter. It's all about my story, basically. Well, his story. It's all about their story. It's not about my story. It's not about your story. It's about, or our story. It's about his story, her story, their story. There you go. That's the only story that matters, which is, his story, other people's stories. Yours isn't valid. But going back to touching on the mythology and things like that, mythology, with it being deemed true and sacred, that means people revered and they actually connected through their own oral traditions, and they were able to elevate themselves to a new level, aspiring to be like, or just aspiring to utilize the energies of these deities, these gods, these goddesses, and help them elevate to a new aspect. Because I listened to the great occult teacher Bobby Hemmett, and I mentioned him before in my other podcast episode, and he's just saying, like, the gods that we look to in these mythologies, they're alchemical processes that we can tap into and utilize their powers for our benefits. Basically, when you say the term like Ashe means to demand the energy to work for you. Like, peace, like I will enter and allow peaceful energy to flow through me. Ashe. You're demanding that peaceful energy to flow through your body, to flow through your mind, and things of that nature. If you, let's say, for example, you be in the energy of Ogun. Ogun is a warrior. He's a builder. He's a warrior and he's a builder. You want to be in the energy of being a builder. Like, you want to start on a new project. You utilize the energy of Ogun. You demand that Ogun force to work with you so you can start that project and have the work ethic and the energy behind it so you can go on and complete it to the best of your ability, the way that you want it. Just so if you want to go on an astrological level, like, you can compare it to Aries. Aries being that cardinal fire sign, being that spark that others gravitate towards, and being in that type of leader position that way, and just doing things, being that spark of energy, high energy, because Aries have a lot of high energy if you want to go on an astrological level. But yeah, just for that example, even you can do it with the zodiac signs, so you can take that as mythology, because they're based off of Roman gods, basically, and Greek gods as well. And you can say that the Greek and Roman gods are based off of indigenous gods around the world. So yeah, they're utilizing the same energy in these different civilizations and things of that nature to influence you. Like, the stars influence you. You have all the aspects in the zodiac signs within you. There's 13, 14 signs, 12 to 14 signs, depending on what you believe and how you want to go about astrology, and which is very interesting. If you think about the 13th sign, Ophiuchus is basically the combination of all 12 of the zodiac signs on the wheel, and it comes together to activate this Christ consciousness. So you can think it on Jesus and the 12 disciples, like, or the sun and the 12 zodiac signs, things like that. So yeah, there's so many ways you could correlate that, and just utilizing these different energies to influence you. So, for example, I'm a sun sign, so the sun sign is your birth sign. I'm a Sagittarius, so utilizing that Sagittarius energy would benefit me, like, through my actions, with it being in the sun. The moon, whatever your moon sign, utilizing that energy within your emotions, things like that, so on and so on and so on. So just utilizing that energy, and this is why I say mystery is very important. Not only is your story, and you're tapping into your ancestry. I said this on my first episode, that ancestral veneration, shadow work, ancestral veneration are two of the most important aspects. I was going to think of another one, but I couldn't think of another idea right now. But these are two of the most important aspects to your spiritual journey and your spiritual elevation, because your ancestors, connected to your ancestors, will give you protection on the physical and the spiritual realm, especially the ancestors that you know personally, that you're able to experience in that lifetime. They're going to be basically your foot soldiers on the spiritual and the physical realm. And then you can have deities as ancestors too. That's a different topic of discussion. I'll touch on that and on another episode. And then shadow work is just going in, reflecting. This is where you can connect to your ancestors. You can do shadow work via meditation and so many other things. I'm gonna touch on that probably next episode. Yeah, I'll touch on that next episode, shadow work and starting your spiritual journey. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up here. It's been fun doing this. I appreciate everyone that had joined. I'm opening the floor up for question, comments, and concern. And yeah, much love to everybody. Hope you have a peaceful day. And always, how are you vibrating? Stay high vibrational. Peace.